Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The president's entire trade policy is predicated on his belief that trade deficits represent failure. Well, just in, the U.S. trade deficit last year was the worst in a decade, $621 billion, and the overall deficit in goods was the worst in America's 243-year history. Now, the deficit with China, also the worst on record. Now, Trump detests trade deficits. He simplistically sees them as a loss of money from the U.S. to her trading partners. Yet, that number he detests in his 2 years in office, the trade deficit has swelled by well over $100 million. He has called himself tariff man, but those tariffs brought retaliatory tariffs that made U.S. exports more expensive. Another uncomfortable number for the White House, the budget deficit soared 77% in the first 4 months of the year to $310 billion. The deficit ballooned as the government spent way more on the military, Veterans Affairs, and interest on the debt. And tax cuts mean the Treasury is taking in less money. Tax revenue down 1.5% over the past 12 months. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow downplayed those numbers.
It's an investment.
We are making an investment in America's future. It's already beginning to pay off. And if that means we incur some additional debt in the short run, so be it.
The White House view is huge corporate tax cuts would supercharge economic growth, enough to rein in the deficit. But that hasn't happened. No. Economic growth last year came in just around the president's 3% official goal and well below the 4 and even 5% growth he often promised. Now, the Congressional Budget Office estimates the deficit will reach roughly $900 billion this year. An aging American population will drive up Medicare and Social Security costs sharply in coming years. Within a decade, John, interest payments on the national debt will be larger than discretionary spending.
Give me a break.
Oh, my God. He knows business. He knows the best people. He knows about trade, the most awesome tool in his toolbox. It's going to be tariffs, and he's going to put tariffs. And, of course, people retaliate with retaliatory tariffs. And guess who lost the trade war? We did. Of course we did. Who predicted we would lose the trade war? We did. Of course we did. America first, everybody. America first. We're first in debt. We're first in deficits. And we're first in, poor people. It's unbelievable. I mean, these numbers are staggering. The United States last year posted an $891.2 billion merchandise trade deficit. That is the largest merchandise, meaning we're buying more from importers than we're selling to them to the tune of almost $900 billion. That is the largest trade deficit for merchandise in America's 243-year history.
He's a jackass.
I know, sir. Okay, so let's look at the service industry, services sector. $621 billion deficit. That is $100 billion more in deficit in service sector, meaning, solar panels, washing machines, all kinds of stuff, right? $100 billion in deficit than Obama. It's a deterioration of $100 billion from the trade service deficit that Donald Trump inherited from Barack Obama.
Give me a break.
I know, sir. What in the world is it going to take for people to say, enough already? Okay, the guy's an idiot. This is why he had his high school bury his records. That's quite a story, I have to say. Did you hear about that? The New York Military Academy, which, by the way, went bankrupt in 2015. And then all of a sudden, Chinese investor, just speaking of trade deficit, services deficit. a Chinese investor came and invested in the school. And so now the New York Military Academy is run by Chinese investors. Oh, what could go wrong there? But I mean, this is just the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. And when you look at who suffered the worst through this trade war that, still continues, when you look at it, it's red states. When you look at it, the biggest losers are Republican-leaning counties in farm states. They suffered the greatest losses from tariffs that U.S. trading partners imposed in retaliation for the president's actions. Those are the soybean farmers. Those are people who export their crops to China. U.S. companies, they're writing off, their losses. But what happens to the soybean man? What happens to the farm? I mean, it's just so unbelievable. And they found that the sizable costs relative to any expected benefits, if all the tariffs he inflicted upon the American consumer, because remember, a tax is something that's paid by you. You pay it. So if it created 35,000 new manufacturing jobs, which it did not, let's say equal to all the steel and aluminum jobs that we lost in the past decade, the cost per job would be $195,000. Cost per job. Who can't afford that? This is unbelievable. This is something that was studied by the Fed. This was studied by Princeton University. Stephen Redding, he is the Mary Amedia, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and Princeton University Stephen Redding reviewed what actually occurred last year after U.S. trade tariffs took effect, and it concluded Americans paid the entire bill. Okay, so let's just take the numbers, right? So we know it's about $700 billion that came out of your pocket, right, to pay for these retaliatory tariffs. And also, interest on the debt when he transferred $1.2 trillion to the very wealth, right? And you're paying all of it. You're paying every last bit of it. And just for good measure, a second study was done by Yale, UCLA, the University of California, Berkeley, and Columbia, and they reached the same conclusion. All right, so almost, $1 trillion came out of our economy because we're paying for these tariffs and we're not getting anything extra in exchange. We're just paying these tariffs, right? And then consider that because you lost a lot of deductions in that giant transfer of wealth, which you are also paying interest on, which is about to surpass all the money we spend on discretionary spending. Interest on the debt is about to surpass the total number that we spend on all discretionary spending. That's quite alarming. Okay. But if you look at the amount that you lost with this tax cut for the middle class, it looks as if we lost as taxpayers about $322 billion. So we lost $700 billion paying tariffs that we didn't actually have to pay, except he started this stupid trade war. And then we lost $322 billion because we lost certain deductions. We lost, write-downs on state and local tax, etc. So this man has single-handedly pulled out of the economy, for you and me, about $1 trillion. That's a good result, right? And didn't he say that this was the result of stupid people, that Obama was stupid, he didn't understand business, Obama was a stupid man, and he had stupid people doing stupid trade deals, and all the deals they did were stupid, and he's going to end them quickly, he's going to get us out of them, and things are going to turn around quickly, and we'll have full employment, and, blah, 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 and everybody will be fine. And meanwhile, farms and factories, you can't... he's going to tell you that China agreed to buy $1 trillion worth of our stuff. But since we can't increase output very much, that means that we'll take it from other countries that buy our stuff and we'll just be selling straight to China, which is stupid. It's really dumb because we lose our leverage in the world with other countries. I mean, the whole thing is just, it's a sham. It's a scam, just like everything this man does. It was a fraud. It was a fraud from the beginning. There was no way it could work because he left out of the equation the fact that other countries could retaliate. It was just as if America was a king and it decided and it made decisions and there would be absolutely no price to pay. Except the reason why he felt so secure doing that is because the price to pay would be paid by you. It would be paid by me. It would not be paid. And you know, this thing where he says, even billions and billions of dollars are pouring into our treasury. He said, quote, billions of dollars right now are pouring into our treasury. And I told you that tariffs don't go into the treasury. Tariffs are paid by you and me. I don't know what he was talking about or why people believed him, but they did. So he stood there at the CPAC conference. I guess a lot of people missed it because that man, it was Adderall straight to the vein. It was sweaty, freaking off the rails, unhinged. God only knows what the hell. He was reliving the 2016 election. He was reliving the inaugural. It was really off the hook. It was hard to watch. And like I said, if you want to negotiate with North Korea, all you had to do was get Donald Trump to stay in a room with Kim Jong-un and give that speech for 2 hours. And Kim Jong-un would have said, here, take my nukes, anything. This is torture. Even the North Koreans can't think of torture any worse than this. And we're good at torture. Believe me.
Believe me.
That's how it translates. But I mean, honestly, it was just, so he said billions of dollars right now are pouring into our treasury at CPAC. And he was telling the people at CPAC that Chinese exporters were absorbing almost the entire burden of the tariffs. But these studies from Yale and Berkeley and UCLA and Columbia and the Fed and Princeton say he's wrong. He's wrong. The cost of the tariffs are absorbed by the people who have to pay them. Consumers and purchasers of the imports are the ones who bear the cost of the tariffs. That's economic speak for you're paying. It's on you. So he took like $800 billion out of the economy, and then he took another $322 billion out of the economy because our tax refunds aren't what they used to be. He's killing us. He literally is killing us in favor of foreign governments. It's unbelievable. I mean, China couldn't be happier. No wonder Mr. Xi likes Donald Trump so much. It's the sickest, policy we've ever heard of, we've ever seen. Of course, it costs individually, you and me, costs red counties the most because they're the farmlands whose stuff is being taxed. Plus, we have a strong dollar, which also increases the price of exports, so they're taking it both ways. It's a little perverted. They're taking it two ways, baby. Two ways. Ain't a pretty picture. I mean, honest to God, man, no good can come from this presidency. So let's end it, shall we? Let's just do it. Before we do it, I need to tell you about this unbelievable bill that I told you was the first bill that the House put down on paper. It's called H.R. 1, because it was number one.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Here's a little report from the Heartland about our booming economy. Take it away.
Yeah, hi, Poppy. Today is the last day of work for 1,400 employees here at the GM plant in Lordstown. And according to the CEO of GM, Mary Barra, she has said the reason that they're closing this plant is because people simply aren't buying sedans anymore. They're buying trucks, they're buying light SUVs to take advantage of low gas prices. And now when she made that announcement back in November that this plant would be closing, we heard from the president right away. He said he was disappointed. He even threatened to cut subsidies for GM. This is an area that supported the president, and largely in part because he said he would keep these jobs here. And according to GM, the cutting of this plant and the jobs and also the 4 others that you mentioned, Poppy, is going to be saving the company about $6 billion going into 2020 by the end of 2020. 2020. And we got a statement from GM just a short time ago. I want to read that to you. They say, we know this is an emotional day for our Lordstown team. They go on to say, we have job opportunities for virtually every hourly employee at the impacted plants. Anyone who wants a job and is willing to relocate will have a job. So far, GM has said that they were able to accommodate new jobs at other plants for about 400 of the employees here from Lordstown. But Poppy, you know, you talk about a ripple effect. When this plant closes, the town of Lordstown suffers. I spoke to the mayor last night who said local businesses are down 50%.
Great.
And Poppy, we can only expect when people stop showing up for work tomorrow that number will decline even more.
Great news, everybody. Great news for Lordstown, which is Youngstown, Ohio. Remember Donald Trump at his rally in Youngstown, Ohio, talking to the people of Lordstown about the GM plant? Remember that? Remember everybody? Remember that?
Don't move.
Don't move.
Don't sell your house.
Don't sell your house.
Don't sell your house. Remember, I got a lot of credit. This is hard to believe, but the press gave me a lot of credit because a number of years ago I said, this is the time to buy a house during one of my speeches. I said, go out and buy. And they did this big story, got all over that Trump predicted. Let me tell you folks in Ohio and in this area.
Yeah, tell me.
Don't sell your house. Don't sell your house. Do not sell it. We're going to get those values up. We're going to get those jobs coming back. And we're going to fill up those factories or rip them down and build brand new ones. That's going to happen.
Well, it better get started ripping them down and building new ones because they laid off everybody today. Everybody. The GM Lordstown plant is closed. The ripple effect. She didn't describe it really, really well. The ripple effect. Something just happened in my screen. The ripple effect is that automobile, parts manufacturers and all the ancillary businesses associated with that factory, they're also laying off their employees. And Donald Trump, don't sell your house, don't sell your house. This is the time that we're going to get those prices. And of course, it's the end. It's the end. Thank you. It's the end for them. It's over. It's done. And 400 people agreed to move. They're going to move to Tennessee. They're going to move. This is so they have to sell their house. I mean, it's just he's such a liar. I can't even stand it. This is the most amazing. And they're maybe we'll have to end subsidies to GM. Did you catch that in that report? That is the sickest thing to hear. Just go woo right by the viewers, or the listeners. They're even he's so upset with GM that he's considering ending subsidies to GM. First of all, that goes through Congress. That's number one. Number two, how ridiculous is it that we are subsidizing a company that last year made in profits, not revenue, profits, $11.8 billion. And they closed the damn plant. I mean, tell me that this isn't a racket. The whole freaking thing is a racket. And, of course, GM's got lobbyists that go to Congress, and Congress then writes them subsidies. We literally subsidize a company that pays no taxes and has profits to the tune of $11.8 billion. Anybody have an issue with that? Anybody think that? I mean, this is the same story with Amazon. Amazon paid no taxes last year. I mean, none. They are a $1 trillion company. They paid no taxes last year. This is why, when Bezos was fighting with, American media and Pecker and all that, I said, these are rich people problems. I didn't even get into that story because who gives a rat's ass if Bezos's, a girlfriend who he was cheating on his wife with, is being spied on by her brother. And her brother is making money off of selling photos to... I mean, really, that's rich people problems. I couldn't care less about that. Not a rat's ass. Because I don't have the, rich people problems. But honestly, man, they are trying to get subsidized money, millions, if not $1 billion, to move, to New York or to move to, Florida or to move to. Are you freaking kidding me? The states and the governors of the states, the whole political system is so bent toward the wealthy. It is so skewed toward trolling for donations, that it will actually write subsidies, checks to trillion-dollar companies that pay no taxes. Don't you think that that is a breaking point to say, enough already? I've had it. This is rigged. We need a piece of legislation that actually goes to the heart of the matter, which is money in politics. Don't you think it's time to say these lobbyists who lobby for Amazon to get these subsidies, or Amazon itself, which might support a candidate, with through largesse and non-disclosure and all that stuff, so nobody knows who's buying which, group of policy. It's all got to end. Because they are the only people at the table. Our voices are drowned out, right? And how many times have you heard the stupid expression that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu? This is why they went after unions. They had to bust us up so that we couldn't be at the table. And then the only people with money that would be at the table would be the actual employers, the actual corporations, the actual associations for those corporations. The Chamber of Commerce is a lobby shop. It is the biggest lobby shop. The National Association of Manufacturers is a lobby shop. It's one of the biggest lobby shops. In fact, that was Howard's first lobbying job. His very first one was for the National Association of Manufacturers, who lobbies the government for all kinds of stuff, tax breaks, and, if they say, well, we're going to pass a Made in America thing, if you want to build something, it's going to be, the steel's going to be American, or the bearings are going to be American, or whatever. And then the lobbyists go to work and they pick off their clients, right? They pick up clients who are either making something in America and advocating for their product to be included in the end product, or they're lobbying for the corporation itself that says, we can't possibly keep the cost down and make it all in America, so let's have an agreement that 12% of our product will be made in America, and then we could say it's made in America. This is the game. And we're not at the table during any of these discussions. So we all know what the issue is. And frankly, there are only two parties in this country. I mean, you could say there are other parties. There are Green Party, there's a Green Party. There's an Independent Party. There's a Libertarian Party who are just insane. But because of the Electoral College, out of the 350 million Americans, maybe 180 million that actually are eligible to vote, we get two to choose from. That's what we get. Every 4 years, we get two people. And we have to choose between two people. But there is a party that is better for working people than the other. And you can guess which one it is. With all its foibles and all its problems, it does seek to rectify a good chunk of them, like the superdelegate issue, which freaked me out to the point of raging. That's been seen to. That has been sort of attempted to be solved. The DNC, the Democratic National Committee under Tom Perez, has changed the superdelegate rule so that this time in 2020, superdelegates do not get a vote in the first round, so that you can't go out and court and promise and get the party apparatchiks to choose between the primary candidates, of which we have many. That's where our choices come in. This is when you get to fall in love, so that they can't choose who's going to win at the convention before the first debate even occurs. That it was a problem. It's no longer an active problem. And you could thank Bernie for that, whether you want to or not. You have to, because that's what happened. But anyway, H.R. 1 is a bill that will be voted on Friday. Friday. It's current, okay? Friday morning, early morning, the House of Representatives will have a vote on a piece of legislation called H.R. 1. It is the most sweeping set of ethics regulations, of voting rights. It has things in it like automatic voter registration. You show up to vote, you can register right then and there. It's got all kinds of demonstrable cleanup efforts. It has public financing of campaigns. If a candidate chooses to issue PAC money, if they say they will not take any PAC money, the public coffer will match an individual small donation. Let's say I give $1. The government will give them $6 for every dollar I can give, so that they're really, taking public financing and no business interests are represented in their contributions. It has online registration, same-day registration, automatic voter registration. And the Republicans are screaming and yelling about this. They are literally furious about this because it cuts out their donors from being the only people at the table, which is the situation that they currently have. 0 House Republicans have endorsed this bill, and every House Democrat, every single one of them, have co-sponsored this bill. Every single Democrat. The Republicans are so scared that this non-functioning democracy of ours has a shot at being functional again. The Chamber of Commerce says, just like the NRA, they're going to rank members on how they vote. If one Republican votes for this, they will have money spent against them in a primary situation. We want to have open, accountable, responsive politics that answers to we the people. It's called the For the People Act for a reason. It is a transformational change to the entire political system. It is a major beginning. It is a major break. So let me show you what the Republicans started running today. This is Kevin McCarthy, the douchebag.
There's a new majority of the House of Representatives. And guess what? They want the government to interfere in our free and fair elections. It's Nancy Pelosi's #1 priority. In fact, the legislation is called H.R. 1. Now, here's what it would do. First, the bill sends your taxpayers' dollars to fund political campaigns. Not to build roads or bridges, but to add 600% of taxpayer money to every small dollar donated by Americans. So let's say Mary from Michigan donates $200 to a preferred candidate. Well, now you have just chipped in another $1,200. Second, H.R. 1 would legalize voting for convicted felons all over the country, even if they were convicted of election fraud.
What?
Does that make sense to you? Not only is this dangerous, it's unconstitutional. Now, third, H.R. 1 would weaken the security of our elections and make it harder to protect against voter fraud. Here's how. It would automatically register voters from DMV databases.
Yep.
Voting is a right, not a mandate. In most cases, this legislation would actually prevent officials from removing ineligible voters from the rolls and would make it much more difficult to verify the accuracy of voter information.
No.
So future voters might be underage, dead, or illegal immigrants, or maybe even registered 1, 2, or 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
Democrats just don't care. Democrats call H.R. 1 the For the People Act.
Yes, they do.
But it really is a For the Politicians Act. It's not designed to protect your vote. It's designed to put a thumb on the scale of every election in America and keep the swamp swampy.
Oh, my God. This is what they're saying. Okay, our right to vote is a right. It's not a mandate. What does that mean? Okay, so here's what H.R. 1 does about voting, right? About registration. You know, if you have a driver's license, you would automatically be registered to vote. Nothing for you to do here. But if you wanted to not be registered to vote, you could opt out. They think that that is dangerous for democracy, that each and every person who has a driver's license and is of age and eligible to vote because they are, identified, and to get your driver's license, you've already produced documents, you've already shown that you're a citizen, you've already shown a passport, or you've already shown a social security card, or you've already shown your birth certificate. Everybody, and then you have, so if you are eligible for a driver's license, okay, then you are eligible to vote, unless your driver's license signifies that you are ineligible to vote. And then if you didn't want to be, you could opt out. It imposes requirements on the states to offer early voting. It offers same-day registration for everybody. It establishes ethical standards for the executive branch and for our Supreme Court justices. It provides public financing for campaigns. It has guidelines for the types of lobbying that can be done. It gives the Federal Election Commission enforcement power. You know how I always tell you the FEC is a toothless wonder? Why do I always say that the Federal Election Commission is a toothless wonder? Because they have no power of enforcement. This actually gives them power of enforcement. It changes the Federal Election Commission from a 6-member agency with the same number of Democrats and Republicans on it so that no consensus can ever be reached, right? Because it's always going to be 3-3. It changes it to a 5-member panel with the chairman or the chairwoman having authority to launch an enforcement action against somebody who's taking foreign cash, or against an organization that is taking foreign cash, or against an organization that is owned by a foreign government or is owned by a board of directors made up of foreign officials. Because right now there's no, they can't enforce anything. It says that disclosure has to occur if somebody is going to meet the $10,000 donor threshold. Now, who gives $10,000? People who can afford to give $10,000. The largest business organizations give that kind of cash to each member right? They have to disclose who they are. They're going to have to stand up at CPAC like the My Pillow guy and say Donald Trump was chosen by God and risk their business. But let me tell you, every lobby shop is against it. Everyone. The Alliance of Automobile Manufacturers. Okay, this is a lobby shop. American Bankers Association. Anytime you hear association. Petroleum Institute, against it. American Insurance Association, against it. Builders and Contractors Associated, against it. The Motorcycle Industry Council, against it. National Association of Manufacturers are against it. Retail Industry Leaders Association, and the March for Life Action Committee, the lobby for my uterus. I mean, obviously, these people are terrified that there just might be other voices at the table. If we did it this way, think about it. If someone was running for Congress, they wouldn't be able to go to the lobby shop and have a breakfast at Charlie Palmer's at 8 o'clock in the morning and then move to the next room and have the National Association of Manufacturers host a brunch, and then move to the next room for lunch and have the Airline Association have a lunch for them, and then, cocktails for the National Association of Manufacturers. And they do this every day. Instead, they'd have to come to you. They'd have to come visit with us once in a while. They'd have to go to the people of Lordstown. They'd have to go to the districts that are hard hit by GM moving. Or they'd have to go to the districts that are against paying $1 trillion company to move into their neighborhood. They'd have to come to you.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
So this is a big night. It's a historic night. The Rules Committee just finished meeting on H.R. 1, the For the People Act, and this is all about restoring power back to the people. It will take big money out of our political system. It will protect voting rights and restore some integrity to our election system. This is something that Democrats, Republicans, and Independents all across the country favor. Unfortunately, we have some Republicans here in the Congress that are fighting against it because they want to protect their big money special interest friends who donate generously to their campaigns.
Yep.
But really, politics should be controlled by the people of this country, not by big money special interests, not by corporate PACs. And so I am proud that the Rules Committee just reported this out. We're going to have a vigorous debate over the next few days. We've made in order over 70 amendments. This is an open process, a transparent process, and I trust at the end of it, we will pass this bill and we will send it over to the Senate.
Thank you. Representative Kildee, thank you. This is a very big step toward, fixing what's broken. They spent decades, the Republicans did, devising a system that where elections are not decided by votes, they're decided by money. And they've managed to create a non-functioning democracy, and H.R. 1 seeks to try and make it work again. And so you have the Chamber of Commerce types say that the bill would silence the business community. No, it would just make it so that you're not the only voice, that our voices are heard too. Money talks, it always will. But H.R. 1 is just about making sure money doesn't drown out everybody else. That's all it is. And the Republicans have crafted a system that they are so freaking proud of, where you can't really vote. God help you if you try and do an absentee, right? North Carolina, they'll come, they'll take it, they'll fill it out for you, or they'll throw it away. I mean, there's so much election fraud. There is no voter fraud, but there is tons of election fraud. In Texas, this is just a shocking number. In January, the Secretary of State of Texas, David Whitley, he started a political firestorm because he questioned the citizenship of 100,000 voters, and he said he was going to remove them. He was going to purge them all from the voter rolls. So a federal judge, they say, oh, people will vote illegally or not. No. A federal judge is always going to oversee, and a federal judge looked at what the Secretary of State in Texas wanted to do, purge 100,000 eligible voters from the voting rolls, and he took the Secretary of State of Texas to task, and he blocked Texas from removing any registered voter without the approval of the court. We want to bring back these rules, the pre-clearance rules, that if you're going to change anything about the election, the amount of polling places, if you're going to change the registration early voting, or if you're going to change, days for early voting, or if you're going to change the number of polling places, then you need to tell the court that you're doing it and why, and they will tell you if you're free to do so. There was no widespread voter fraud in Texas. There was none. And that was just the most recent incident that's come up that the state has had. The voter ID requirements, this is, you got Texas that will accept a shooting range ID, but won't accept a student ID as valid ID to vote. This is the scam. This is the sham. This is the fraud. We all know about North Carolina. We still don't have anybody sitting in that 9th district. There's nobody there because no one would certify that fraudulent election. And so you had a congressman from Texas named Congressman Vesey, along with a congressman from Washington, Rick Larson, introduced the America Votes Act. It would allow voters to go to the polls without ID. Without ID. All you do is you sign an affidavit, you say that you are, who you say you are, and then you vote. That's it. That's the way it's supposed to be. We have had our votes suppressed. Look at Georgia. Oh, my God. He purged and Florida, too. Purge and purge. New York tried to purge. This has got to stop. You have 35 states with voter ID laws that if they don't bring the required ID that's required by their state, then they can't vote. What the hell is that? And like I said, you have weird forms of ID that are accepted and others that are legitimate that aren't accepted. And it costs money to get a voter ID. They go, oh, voter ID is free. It isn't free. You have to have a birth certificate in order to get something, driver's license. You have to have a passport in order to get some. These things cost money. I know because I have a passport. It costs like hundreds of dollars to have a passport. It's common sense. Yes, your vote should count. Yes, your vote should mean something. People will stop voting if they think their vote doesn't count, which is what part of Donald Trump's strategy was when he said the whole thing's rigged, so don't even bother. Well, it was rigged because, he projects everything he's doing onto you. But ID is not free. You need the supporting documents, and all the supporting documents cost money. Birth certificate costs money. Passport costs money. Everything costs money. The idea is not free at all. And so poor people just can't. They can't. They just can't. So they opt out. We also want in this H.R. 1 to make Election Day a federal holiday. And once you have a driver's license as an American citizen and you hold a driver's license, then you're automatically registered to vote unless you opt out. And you can always opt out of being registered. Yes, felons would regain their voting rights after they complete all of their sentencing requirements. Yes. Their theory is those felons committed election fraud. I think in 10 years we've had 44 cases. In 10 years. So let's punish over 1.5 million people. Let's do that. Because that's the right remedy for 44 people over 10 years. The Postal Service would have to carry absentee ballots for free, so that anybody who receives mail is eligible to vote regardless of their disability, regardless of their age. They would also be able to return their ballot without postage. I mean, you look at Georgia, you look at North Carolina, you look at Texas, you look at all of these schemes. It's unbelievable. And then, they take on the dark money too. It requires organizations that are involved in politics disclose donors, big donors. The people, who are running grassroots organizations all support this. It's like Democracy 21. They support it. They wrote H.R. 1 represents the beginning of a battle to revitalize our democracy that will be fought in Congress for as long as it takes to restore the integrity and health of our democracy. I mean, you got all these organizations that are for it. The actual author of the whole bill, H.R. 1, is John Sarbanes from Maryland. He's the principal author. He gave an interview to Essence magazine that it's in the homework today. I suggest everybody read it because he presents the evidence about super PACs and the 501c organizations that have become a vehicle for these donors, these millionaires, these corporations who funnel all this money into campaigns and into the political space and have a huge influence over the way policy gets made without any of us being listened to, heard, or at the table even. When you're a legislator and you're trying to make tax policy and you know that there's a super PAC out there that's acting on at the behest of Wall Street, for instance, and that the big banks, which is why the bankers are against this, the big banks, are threatening to spend a lot of money against you, if you legislate, let's say, a trade tax for large trades, you know what I mean? Like a half a penny for, trades that are done, in the thousands or millions online, right? Like that. So they will see that you're writing this bill and they will threaten you with spending a lot of money against you in a primary situation. And you know what? Somewhere in your head, that affects the way that you craft legislation, or it affects the way that you focus on an issue, or it affects the way that you eventually vote on someone else's bill. You mix money and you mix dependency on money, or you fear money being spent against you in large amounts. You mix that together with human nature, and it distorts everything about our democracy, period. Natalie in North Carolina.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
Well, anyways, like you were saying, in North Carolina, we have to provide some kind of ID or some kind of information that says that we are residents of North Carolina,
Florida
that
too.
We're legal residents of North Carolina in order to get our license. I don't see a problem with automatically registering someone when they get their driver's license.
I don't either.
I mean, it's like with down here, and I'm sure with other states. If you're under 21 and you have a license, it's gonna specify under 21 or not of legal age. Should say the same thing with voting, and it's to follow you every time and renew every time you renew your license. I think that's simple. It's less expensive, and it just makes
It's
a whole lot of
efficient.
sense.
It's efficient. It's justice. It's just, and it makes
Mm-hmm.
it. And the other option I would think is that when you're born, you get a Social Security number.
Yes.
And I would say that when you're born, you get a Social Security number and a voter registration card on your 18th birthday. You know.
That's something that my husband and I were talking about. It's like, how can we talked about that. I mean, my son, he automatically was assigned a Social Security number when he was born.
Of course.
So, that follows you. That's
whole
your
life.
ID.
It is.
And it makes no sense why they keep doing things like this. They want us to spend money in order to register to vote. And then it discourages us to want to vote, and that's
also, I don't know
what they want to do.
Also, I don't know where you are in North Carolina, but in the more rural places here in Florida too, another little trick is they close the polling places or they move it outside the limits of the little town where there is no transportation. I mean, that should require oversight by a judge. Why are you doing this? What is the reason for it? Why is this better for democracy or worse for? I mean, people have to smarten up. And this particular piece of legislation, it restores the rights to the people that we always assumed we had, but the Supreme Court took away, saying we don't need these rights anymore.
Exactly.
So I'm with you.
Yep.
I'm with you. I'm there. I just, you're born, you get a Social Security number. So when you're born, you ought to get a voter ID card. You ought to be registered to vote on your 18th birthday. Period. End of story. If you don't like that, then do it with the driver's license, because you do have to show that you're an American citizen. You do have to show your Social Security. I mean, that is the entree into American life, is your Social Security card. So, if you lose it, you got to pay for a replacement. You got to go to the Hall of Records, then you got to go find your birth certificate, then you find out, I don't have my birth certificate. You got to pay for that too. It's not free. So what's wrong with automatic registration? It's the day that you're born, because if you're born here, you're a citizen. Period. End of story. They just want people not to vote. When there's high turnout, Democrats win because there are more of us than there are of them. As I said, only 26% of these American people that we currently share this country with are Republican. Doesn't mean everybody else is a Democrat. It means they're an independent or a libertarian or whatever. But they are so scared that if everyone had the ability to vote, they would.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
It's obvious he can't control his mind or his tongue.
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
You're making Election Day a federal holiday in order to incentivize businesses to make it also a holiday and bring out people to the polls. Why is incentivizing people to vote?
Well, what is the problem? We had the biggest election turnout since 1966 last year. If the idea here is to make it
66
more likely we have a higher turnout, it seems to me that's happening. What affects turnout more than anything else is interest and competition. Spending in races, for example, the more money that's spent in a race, the higher the turnout.
What?
The less money is spent, the lower the turnout.
What?
We got a lot of federal holidays in America. I personally don't see any point in having any more.
Oh, my God. That's Mitch McConnell talking about H.R. 1, which proposes that Election Day be a federal holiday and that automatic registration begins in this country. And they're against it so severely because they understand that a high voter turnout means Democrats win. This last 2018, the midterms, we did have a very high voter turnout because of the rage against this swampy machine of ours. So it was high, but still only 49% of eligible voters voted in 2018. Less than 50% of the people who could vote did vote. Now, let me just give you numbers from other countries, okay? France and Germany both exceed 63% of their populations voting in every election. Canada gets 62% turnout. They had an election in 2015. Those are the most recent numbers. Sweden, 82.5% of the eligible population turned up in 2014. And yet here in the United States, less than 50% of the eligible voters turn up to vote. And that's because we work, and that's because we get shoved into purges. And like that one, what was it, the 2016, the primary, 2016. When I went to vote, I showed up and they told me I was purged. At my local polling place, I had to drive like 35 minutes to the supervisor's office, which is way north of where I live. Now, I wasn't working, okay? I wasn't working yet. So I had all day to do it. And guess what? It took me all day to do it. I had to go to the supervisor's office. I had to stand on this long-ass line because there's so many people that won't take no for an answer, and they're being told you have to vote on a provisional ballot, which we all know means in the garbage. There were so many people on that line at the supervisor's office that it took like 2 hours to get to a clerk. And then the clerk tried to give me some song and dance about how I'm not really registered. And I said, pull up my voting record. Pull it up. Because if you pull up my voting record, you'll see I voted in every single election, including primaries, going back to 2000 in this county. That's how long I've lived here, and that's how long I voted here. And when they pulled up my records, I had to wait and blah, blah. They pulled up, oh, yeah, you're right. You are a registered voter. You vote in every election. Okay, I'm sorry. So can I now vote? I'm at the election supervisor's office. Can I cast my ballot? Oh, no, not on election day. On election day, you can't vote at the supervisor's office. On election day, you have to go back to your polling place. So then after waiting in line for like 2-3 hours, finally getting permission to vote from some clerk, I had to drive again another, so it's an hour. It was 30 minutes there, 30 minutes. So it took me 4 hours. Who could do that if you were working? If I were working, there is no way I could do that. And of course, they closed a lot of the polling places here in Florida, and early voting is only available at like one place per county. So if you wanted to early vote here, which I did for the first time, I experienced a 3-hour wait because they limit the number. Why? Why is it like that? It's like that to depress the vote because there are more Democrats and voting Democrats than there are Republicans and voting Republicans. And they know that. Mitch McConnell knows that. And he realizes if Election Day was a holiday, you would have all day to deal with anything that came up, any issue that came up. You'd be able to drive to the supervisor's office. You'd be able to stand in line for 2 hours. You'd be able to get permission to vote. You'd be able to go back to your polling place another half hour away. And you'd be able to cast your ballot after waiting on another line to do that. They get this. So check this out. Mitch McConnell, this H.R. 1 is going to be voted on Friday morning. I would tell you tonight, if you have a little chance, just turn on C-SPAN for a little bit. They're debating it right now. They've allowed 73 amendments to be voted on in their bill. They're being very open about this. The process is very, very wide open. Every single Democrat in the House of Representatives is a co-sponsor. You never see this. Is a co-sponsor of this bill. And not one Republican has said that they would vote for it. In fact, all the lobby shops, the Chamber of Commerce, all of them, the Bankers Association, the National, I went through a whole long list. There's so many lobby shops. But all of them, all of the associations, all of the councils, all of the, lobby groups have said to their Republican friends in the House and in the Senate that if you vote for this, we're going to spend a ton of money against you. We have to make that something that cannot happen. And thereby if we did that, we would be protecting the freaking Republicans from primary attempts, okay? So realize that you would be actually helping them, but they're too stupid to know it. They just like a closed system. They just like that their donors come to their office and their donors throw fundraisers for them at Charlie Palmer's for breakfast, for brunch, for lunch, for cocktails, for dinner. It's one-stop shopping for checks. And they like it like this, and our voices should not be heard. They should not count. We shouldn't be able to organize. Any organization or association that we would make is called a union, and we're corrupt. We're corrupt, but only the business organizations are not corrupt. You know how corrupt they are? They're so corrupt that in this bill, it actually restricts the kinds of things that these lobbyists can do. They have to register if they're a foreign agent now. The Federal Election Commission will finally get enforcement power because it doesn't have that now. There's a lot in this bill that fixes a lot of what's wrong. A lot of what's wrong. And what's wrong is the money. That's number one. And number two, the inability to access your ballot. So Mitch McConnell is saying, we have a lot of holidays. We don't need any more holidays. What the F, man? That's an argument? That's an argument that he's actually... So here's what I learned. He's not going to introduce it in the Senate. He's not. He will not allow it on the floor of the Senate. So H.R. 1 is going to pass the House Friday morning. And then it's just going to lay there like Mitch McConnell does on a Friday night. It's just going to lay there like a mutilated, quivering mass of flesh because he will never introduce it, which is why we have one more election like this to go. And it's why you have to choose a Democratic Senate. And it's why you have to choose a Democratic president who will sign a piece of legislation that restores our voting rights, that limits the corporate money that is just I mean, this president, on a pledge of drain the swamp, has turned the swamp into an entire ecosystem, an entire freaking sewer. It's just disgusting. And then on top of it, President Trump has said he will veto it. He'll veto H.R. 1. He doesn't want people to be able to vote. He doesn't want to take the money. I thought he was draining the swamp. This is the best way to drain the swamp. We live in a country where no one votes because no one thinks their vote counts. We live in a country where 49% of eligible voters show up in any given election, and they think that's plenty. They think that's good enough. And then you look at all the other industrialized nations in the world, and they have a participation over 60% every election. Some of them have participation rates of 80% every election. Why? Because the people are being served by their governments in Germany, in Sweden, in Norway, in France, in Denmark. And they have something to vote for and protect. And we don't. We're always fighting against. But we know what we're for. And we know what they're against. And they're against us, period. Any man that could stand there and say, or make a video telling you that public financing of elections is a bad idea and that we should let the corporate money continue to roll in to lobby for subsidies to trillion-dollar profitable corporations, billion-dollar profitable corporations, using the tax laws as a vehicle for the transfer of wealth from us to them, and having an off-the-hook freaking president where there is no oversight being performed upon him when you have a Republican majority for 2 years, and he sucks out of the economy $1 trillion through tariffs that we have to pay, harebrained ideas, as if the United States can set, trade rules without, any other country having a say in it, and they launch retaliatory tariffs against us, and we have to pay for it. Where he takes out of the economy $322 billion around tax time in refunds that we used to get because he removed deductions we used to get so he could give it to the wealthy, and the interest on the debt he incurred by giving a $1.2 trillion tax break to the wealthy. We have to pay the interest on their gift. They got the gift, and we're stuck with the bill. on this tax break. The interest on the debt is something we all have to pay. But they don't, because their tax code tells them they can be a $1 trillion corporation and they owe nothing. Nothing toward the debt, nothing toward the deficit, nothing toward anything. They don't have to pay anything. In fact, they want a subsidy. They want to charge your state $60,000 per job created, or they want to charge your state $195,000 per job they create. Are you kidding me? Then when they don't pay their workers, but maybe $11 an hour or $7.25, we also have to subsidize their workers with EBT cards and Medicaid, because they refuse to provide health care or they refuse to provide a living wage. Walmart does that. And so not only are we subsidizing the build of the Walmart, maybe we're giving them the land, maybe we're giving them no taxation for X amount of years, whatever it is. And then they come in and the top paying job is $24,000 a year, which we've subsidized on the front end. On the back end, they're not even paying enough to live on, so we have to subsidize the worker for them, too. And then the worker is going to spend the money from the EBT card in the Walmart. That's quite a racket. Now, how do you think that happens? The legislators are bought off or threatened by fear of losing money or fear of having money spent against them, or they just go along to get the money. It's not right. And everyone in this country knows it's not right. Some people have just decided to throw their hands up in the air and say, you can't fight City Hall. Bullcrap. Of course you can. But this particular piece of legislation, when I first saw it, and when they first started this 116th Congress, this was the first piece of legislation, and it was amazing, and it was awesome, and it was important. And now we're going to vote on it on Friday, and Mitch McConnell says, I'm not going to introduce it.
He's live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Mr. Cohen, do you know whether President Trump's tax returns were really under audit by the IRS in 2016?
I don't know the answer. I asked for a copy of the audit so that I could use it in terms of my statements to the press, and I was never able to obtain one.
Okay. So do you have any inside knowledge about what was in the president's tax returns that he refused to release?
I do not.
Can you give us any insight into what the real reason is that the president has refused to release his tax returns?
Statements that he had said to me was that what he didn't want was to have an entire group of think tanks that are tax experts run through his tax return and start ripping it to pieces, and then he'll end up in an audit and he'll ultimately have taxable consequences, penalties, and so on.
So that's an interesting point, that basically he said he didn't want to release his tax returns because he might end up in an audit. So could you presume from that statement that he wasn't under audit?
I presume that he's not under audit.
Oh, my God. So you have a president who actually said he was under audit to prevent himself from being audited by the IRS, something that every single American is exposed to. I mean, this is just unbelievable. So here's the thing. House Democrats are also going to demand Donald Trump's tax returns, and they're going to make that demand in 2 weeks. And they're going to do it under a 1924 law that allows the Ways and Means Committee, the Taxation Committee, the ways and means by which we pay our bills. That's why it's called Ways and Means. It allows the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee to look at anybody's confidential tax filings, and they're entitled to make those public if they decide to do so. So Richard Neal, who is the head of the Ways and Means Committee, he is going to make that request in 2 weeks because of the testimony of one Michael Cohen the other day. Now, I have to tell you that Michael Cohen is leaving the hearing room today. There he is. He's coming off the elevator. Let's see if I can show you this. I'm sure I can. And he's going to make a statement. Let's see.
And what he endured the whole time from Republicans was, well, wait a minute, you're not credible. And, you know, they have a point in that he is going to jail in part because he lied to Congress. So what?
Okay, there he is.
So much for coming.
Hold on, he's still talking.
Everything went very well. I believe that they're happy with my responses. It's been a long day. It's been a long couple of days, but again, I believe they're happy, and I have given them my assurance that any additional information that they need, I'm here to cooperate and will continue to cooperate. So thank you all very much.
Okay, that was like a big nothing burger, but yes, so now we know that he's completed his fourth day of testimony in 8 days. Oh my God. Four different testimony. He did the House, well, let's see if we can get this right. He did the House Intelligence behind closed doors. He did the he did the Oversight Committee in public session last Wednesday, a week ago today. Then he went to the Senate Intelligence Committee behind closed doors on Thursday. And today he went back to the House Intelligence Committee and produced documents for the Intelligence Committee today. The documents that he produced today were documents that show that Donald Trump's attorneys that he named in that open session in the Oversight Committee. Remember, he named Alan Garten, who was Jared and Ivanka's attorney, the Trump Organization's attorney. He named Jay Sekulow, who is the president's attorney in all things Russia. Remember, he called out names, and he said that they had edited his testimony to Congress about the Trump Moscow project so that his testimony ended up being untrue, false. This is what Michael Cohen was forced to play. Well, this is what Michael Cohen was confronted with. And then when they raided his offices, they found documents that showed that the Trump-Moscow deal had gone through the whole election and that Michael Cohen lied. And so he had to plead guilty to lying to Congress. So when Michael Cohen was asked about that under oath in front of the Oversight Committee, he said that lawyers had changed his testimony to comport with what Trump wanted him to say. And then he got caught and pled guilty. So today, he showed up at the Intel Committee, and apparently he showed the new documents that show the edits that made the written testimony to Congress false. The written testimony he delivered to Congress in 2017 about the Trump Organization and their pursuit of Trump Tower Moscow in 2016. He promised that he would deliver those, and today was the day that apparently he did. I think it's this one.
This meeting occurred just before your testimony before the Select Committee on Intelligence here in the House. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Was that a topic of conversation with the president himself?
If this is the specific instance that I was there with Mr. Sekulow, yes.
Yeah.
So you had a conversation with the President of the United States about your impending testimony before the House Intelligence Committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What was the nature of that conversation?
He wanted me to cooperate. He also wanted just to ensure, by making the statement, and I said it in my testimony, there is no Russia, there is no collusion, there is no deal. He goes, it's all a witch hunt, and he goes, this stuff has to end.
Did you take those comments to be suggestive of what might flavor your testimony?
Sir, he's been saying that to me for many, many months. And at the end of the day, I knew exactly what he wanted me to say.
And why was Mr. Sekulow in the meeting?
Because he was going to be representing Mr. Trump going forward as one of his personal attorneys in this matter.
So it was sort of a handoff meeting.
Correct.
In any way, final question, did the president in any way, from your point of view, coach you in terms of how to respond to questions or the content of your testimony before a House committee?
Again, it's a difficult answer because he doesn't tell you what he wants. What he does is, again, Michael, there's no rush. There's no collusion. There's no involvement. There's no interference. I know what he means because I've been around him for so long. So if you're asking me whether or not that's the message, that's staying on point, that's the party line that he created, that so many others are now touting, yes, that's the message.
Okay, so that was his testimony, and that sparked an invitation from Adam Schiff, the House Intel Committee chairman, to come back and show us any edits to any documents that were changed by Alan Garten, who is the attorney for the Trump Organization, Abby Lowell, who's an attorney for Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, and Jay Sekulow, who is Donald Trump's personal attorney. Come and show us those documents. And that's apparently what he did today. He went with documents to show the edits to the false written statement that he delivered to Congress in 2017. He said there were changes made, additions, Jay Sekulow for one. There were several changes that were made, including how we were going to handle that message, which was the message, of course, the length of time that the Trump Tower Moscow project stayed and remained alive. Now, Jay Sekulow is saying that Michael Cohen lied again under oath over there, risking his plea deal, which would put him in jail for about 70 years instead of 3. He was supposed to go to jail today, but he's recovering from shoulder surgery or some such thing. And so they postponed his entry into jail till May. But he said that he's been coached and testimony's been changed. And so they asked him, was the president in these meetings? And he said, yes. Who else was there? Jay Sekulow was in these. Well, what were they telling you to do? He's telling me there is no collusion. There is no Trump Tower Moscow. There is no deal. There is nothing. There's nothing. And, it's a witch hunt. It's all made up. So he understood what, he was supposed to write down and all this. Now, I should tell you that the Republicans are sending a letter to Cohen's attorney saying that Adam Schiff is coaching Michael Cohen. That Adam Schiff is the one who's telling Michael Cohen what to say. This is sick. This is just really, really sick. Now, as for the tax returns and the request for tax returns, that is handled by, and you won't even believe this, Steve Mnuchin. My Tourette's boy. Poor Tourette's syndrome boy. He's in charge of the Treasury. The Treasury oversees the IRS. So Steve Mnuchin's going to have to make the call. He's going to have to decide whether or not this 1924 law that allows for Congress to request any American, including the president, any American's tax returns, is a valid law. Well, I feel so much better knowing Attorney Mnuchin is on it. Maybe he'll give it to his girlfriend or his wife, or maybe she'll decide. Who knows? This is crazy. This is just, it's unbelievable. But also today, the Department of Financial Services is inquiring about the insurance fraud that Michael Cohen testified to. Remember, AOC asked the question. She asked Michael Cohen if there was any indication that he lies to insurance companies, that he inflates his assets for the purpose of insurance claims and deflates his assets for the purpose of taxation. So these two things stand in the same room together. And he said yes. Well, turns out that the New York State Department of Financial Services has sent a 9-page subpoena to Aon PLC, which is his insurer.
It's the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
Thank you very much.
So what has happened since he said, the president commits insurance fraud, is that a 9-page subpoena has been sent to Aon PLC, which is the insurer for the Donald Trump organization. And they're requesting the documents that might exist about whether or not he inflates his assets over here for insurance claims. And then they're going to get his tax returns and see if he deflates his assets over there for tax purposes, because that would be fraud. That would be tax fraud. And if you did it, you'd be in jail. See what I'm saying? Of course, we can't indict a president. So it'd just be one more article of impeachment over here. Oh my God, this is insane. And the president has done such a lousy job. You know, when you really think about, where is our infrastructure bill? Where is it? Where's our tax cut for the middle class? Whatever happened to that? Where's Mexico's check for the wall? You know, we're still living in a national emergency scenario. And of course, the House has voted to end the national emergency. And because they put it on the floor, I think they should do every piece of legislation as a privilege resolution. I think everything, including H.R. 1, which goes to the heart of a functioning democracy, whether or not we're going to have one. I think they should do everything in a joint resolution. Everything should, I don't know the rules. Honestly, I would have to call the House parliamentarian. And you know what? Maybe I will. And find out what it takes to be a joint resolution. Because in a joint resolution scenario, Mitch McConnell cannot refuse to introduce this piece of legislation. And H.R. 1 is the key that unlocks the door to full participation in our democracy. It is a key that unlocks the door to your power, the power for you to vote, the power for you to choose on Election Day. Election Day is the most power that any American citizen could ever have. And I swear to God, it blows my mind that more than 50% of the population, and that's in a very good high turnout year, says, nah, I don't want to use my power. I got an AR. I'd rather do that. It's so ridiculous. It's so stupid. But Donald Trump is, and also there's the story, I didn't even go down that road because I'm sure you heard it, that Ivanka's security clearance was also denied after a background check by the FBI, by the CIA, by the White House Office of Personnel that makes the decisions, their security office, that determines whether a staffer should be granted after the FBI, after the CIA does their background check. Concerns were raised about Ivanka, too. They didn't want the White House Office of Personnel, after getting the results of the background checks from these two intelligence and law enforcement organizations, said, no, she shouldn't have one. And so Donald Trump started pressuring Don McGahn and John Kelly to make the decision to give Ivanka a security clearance, and we know from the New York Times article last week that they did the same thing with Jared, and that both of them, the White House counsel and the White House chief of staff, McGahn and Kelly, refused to do so, and Trump did it anyway. Now, Ivanka sat down with ABC News just, 2 days ago, and she said her daddy didn't do it. Daddy had nothing to do with it.
There are a lot of investigations going on, as you know. Democrats launching new ones this week. One of them into the clearance process, something that you and your husband now have, security clearances, but there were some issues early on. And there are a lot of people that question whether you were given special treatment by the president, overriding other officials. Can you speak to that?
There were anonymous leaks about there being issues, but the president had no involvement pertaining to my clearance or my husband's clearance. Zero.
What were the problems early on?
There weren't any, other than a backlog that exists of close to 1 million clearances across government. This isn't new. This was happening under the Obama administration, the Clinton administration. There are literally close to 1 million people in the federal government who are in the pipeline to get their permanent clearance and are on temporary status.
So no special treatment?
No.
No. Well, She either doesn't know that Daddy did it for her, or she's lying. You choose, because I can't decide. But there was a request by the Oversight Committee Chairman Elijah Cummings to the White House to ask for the documents that cover how the clearances were denied, how the clearance process worked, why the White House Personnel Office said no, why the FBI said no, why the CIA said no to clearances for Jared and Ivanka. And you know it has to do with their indebtedness. You know it has to do with the fact that they are easily purchased, which goes right back to H.R. 1 and all the money sloshing around in government, right, that you could purchase. You can now purchase the American government. We're for sale. You know, every single Congress member, every single senator, every single president, vice president, through their transition, through their inaugural committee, through their PACs, through their re-elect committees, right? They're all for sale. And you can buy whoever you like if you can afford to play in that arena. Of course, ordinary people can't, so that leaves you out. But Elijah Cummings asked for the documents, and Cipollini, who's now the White House counsel who took McGahn's place, he said, he wrote a whole long letter. I won't read it to you. I'll just read you what jumped off the page to me. He wrote, because Congress derives its oversight authority from its legislative powers, my office must ensure that any request from the committee serves a legitimate legislative purpose. You freak, they're called the Oversight Committee. That is their legislative purpose. It's said right there in their title. What do you mean you don't know what legislative purpose would be addressed here? He wrote, I requested information from the committee about how, quote, your regulatory needs depend on receiving the particular information you seek. They don't just have regulatory functions. They also are a co-equal branch of government charged with oversight of the executive branch. It's right there in their title. It's right there in the name of the committee. What is wrong with it? And all this is delay, 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 delay. That is what this is. This is nothing more than a tactic to keep Elijah Cummings from finding out that Donald Trump, over the objections of the intelligence community, the law enforcement community, and the White House Office of Personnel, said these two kids, they are blackmailable. They are vulnerable to, offers of cash. They are in debt up to their eyeballs. They got a loan coming due. He paid $1 billion at the height of the market for a building that he can't sell. And he's running around to the United Arab Emirates and the Seychelles, and he's running around and doing meetings with Russians in Trump Tower prior to. What are you kidding me? No, he's not getting a security clearance. No, we don't recommend a security clearance, and neither do we recommend one for her either. And the Oversight Committee would like to see those documents, and they won't give them because they want the Oversight Committee to say, what is the legislative purpose of oversight? It's in the Constitution, Cipollini. Over here. Oh, my God. Karen in Los Angeles.
Yes. Hi, Randy. Love you.
Love you more.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Okay. So I have a scenario I want to run by you because I was talking to my mom about this.
All right.
So I'm believing that the Dems are not going after Trump in regards to impeachment at this point because, like you said the other day, they're just setting up the groundwork to let everyone know because impeachment is a political act. Mm-hmm. So let people see, look, this guy's dirty, and they don't want it to backfire like it did on the Republicans when they went after Bill Clinton. Mm-hmm. So they're just going to put all the 81 people, in front of Congress over the next 2 years, which on one hand will hopefully drive Trump's popularity and less people will vote for him. And hopefully we'll get a Dem for president. But if it doesn't happen, Plan B will be, ideally, we'll get a Democratic Senate, and we'll keep the House, Next thing you know, as soon as he's sworn in, he's impeached and then kicked out, and then we have Nancy Pelosi.
That's if we get Pence, too.
Well, yeah, we're going to get them both. I'm going to be very optimistic on that.
Well,
so what do you think?
No, I think they are laying the groundwork for impeachment. I do. I really do. And obviously Mitch McConnell, is never, ever, ever going to allow 67 people to vote for removal. But I promise you Mitch McConnell is not going to run for re-election in 2020. He's just not. He's going to cash out. He's going to go to K Street. He's going to become a lobbyist. This is why he's fighting so hard against things like H.R. 1, which would limit his ability post-Senate to make a living. If this is there's no meat on these bones, meaning that this is just for 2020 and it's all politics and it has nothing to do with the president being a tax fraud, a tax cheat, an overinflator of his own personal wealth, a liar, a person who did collude and did conspire with, various foreigners from, WikiLeaks and Julian Assange to the Russian intelligence operatives who've already been indicted, to Guccifer, to all that, and Roger Stone wasn't part of it, and then this is gonna blow up in their face. It can't just be that they're doing it for the season.
No. I believe
it has to be serious impeachable offenses. And the only reason why it blew up in their face about Bill Clinton is because they charged him with suborning perjury because he asked Monica Lewinsky to say she wasn't having an affair with him, which is.
But do you think they're going to try to do impeachment at this point with the Senate? They're not going to approve it. I mean, they're not going to vote on it.
Well, if they come up with serious crimes, which I believe they have. And they're still documenting them. And remember, these 81 are not people. They're 81 entities and people's documents. That's what they've subpoenaed, documents. And the reason why they subpoenaed documents is because those documents were already submitted either to Virginia in Manafort's case or to New York in Michael Cohen's case or to Mueller in the case of the special counsel's office. So those documents are easily produced because those documents already exist and have been produced. So they will not run up against claims of executive privilege, etc. So that's what they subpoenaed, not people. And you won't see people going in and testifying and testifying and testifying.
No, I was talking about when they had Jared's name. Was it Jared? And it was, Michael Cohen. They had that long list, maybe it's 84, that you read off the other day. You went alphabetically of all the people.
Yep.
That I was talking about that, all those testimonies, and like.
No, those aren't testimonies. Those are document requests from those people.
Got it.
That wasn't an order to appear. Although, if anybody wanted to show up off that list, I'm sure they would be happy to host them. Like who wouldn't be? But I have to tell you, they already have if Donald Trump is overruling the intelligence community and the law enforcement community and the Office of White House Personnel to give people who are vulnerable to blackmail, vulnerable to be purchased by foreign governments, security clearances, that is a major freaking impeachable crime. It's not a crime that you would prosecute in a court of law because he's legally allowed to do it. It is a crime against the democracy. It is a crime. It's a fraud against the American people. And that is impeachable. And if they allow him to be president for one more minute after they can prove that happened, then we're lost. We're lost.
Well, because I kind of feel that people don't think it's real. Like they don't think it really counts. And so they're very numbed by it because he's a reality TV star. They think this is just Apprentice moved to a different station.
But, here's the thing, Karen. We can't worry about 80% of 26% of the people.
No,
that is who Cult 45 is. Cult 45 is 80% of 26% of the American population. And if we're sitting here having our national security in peril because Jared needs money and has a top security clearance and goes over to Saudi Arabia, who attacked us on 9/11, by the way, and gives them for money or for exchange of favors the list of the people plotting against the ascension of Salman to the king's throne, so that they can then torture those people and they can then, tell those people that they will also be killed if they, don't support Salman, who just killed Khashoggi, right? Then we got big problems and this man needs to go. If that happened, this needs to end. It needs to end. I don't, and whether or not the American people understand that selling our intelligence or giving our intelligence to people who attacked us brutally on September 11th, if they think that's a good idea, I don't really care what else they think. Right? They have made themselves irrelevant to the conversation of the national security of this country. Really, they have put themselves like way over there when it comes to listening to them on issues of national security and what they would like to see happen. If people know that Jared did that and they don't care, they can excuse it. Who cares what they think? I care about the security of this country. I care about protecting sources and methods. I care about the Saudis and the Chinese and the Russians all joining forces to move into this hemisphere, okay, in order to do bad things to the United States, knowing that the United States is open to sell secrets, to aid and abet them in whatever nefarious plan they have in mind. I'm sorry, that he's got to go. Buy a stinking podcast.